So, hello everybody. Raw and real and uncut and not staged. This is the J world because you have to see things when they are as what they actually are. Not any fantasy. I don't put makeup on or try to dress nice or look professional because I'm not trying to sell you anything. You're seeing the real reality of what it's like to fluctuate in a very aggressive environment and why people are coming down with cancer, disease, and chronic illness because the environment has fluctuated to such an extent that things that were cured, things that were under the influence are now broken free. Okay? And so I don't care if you're under tinctures and drugs. I don't care. I'm not trying to be judgmental. I know it come off like that because that's how I processed the world that we lived in, because I had to really understand both sides. And so when you're on drugs and under the influence, it's a great thing, right? Because you don't feel anything. But then the other side of it is when you're uncured, you see the reality of what the world is like. You see the reality of what you are going to be dealing with if you don't get to the reality, if you don't actually feel and release and retain. But I'm going to tell you, the reason why people are dying, the reason why people are dealing with their pain, having to feel pain, the reason why people are dying, why animals are dying, because they're in a very highly influential environment that has caused them to fluctuate and evolve and cause them to be uncured, cause them to then have to eat more food to make up the difference of that energy conversion. And so that's the world that we live in, because yesterday was, like I said, was insane. Yesterday I felt like I was under the influence because the frequencies from the storm, and you heard the storm in the background. If you watched my video yesterday, you would have heard the hail that was so astronomical. You would have heard the rain, you would have heard the thunderclaps. It was aggressive. And prior to that, the building up to that, because that wasn't going on during my time outside when I was taking care of errands with my husband. The ramping up to that was feeling like you were drunk. So I felt like I was loopy, okay, which means all the hormones that were in their respective areas in my body, they were let loose and they were mixing together like a soup of hormonal release. And it wasn't from anything that I was doing in my environment, it's the environment out there. I wasn't on drugs because in a slower frequency, people do coffee, people do downers and uppers relative to what's going on, their blood types. Sometimes their blood types cause more energy. And so people are then, when they have so much energy over time in the different blood types, then they have to turn to downers to try to calm the energy, the excessive energy down. So in a slower frequency environment, the drugs, the alcohol, relative to your intention, was what kept you at relative equilibrium, gave you a little bit of the relief because of the way your biochemistry was set. Now in a higher frequency environment, which is basically competing on a level playing field, everyone, relative to their intention, are going to be so sensitive to the environment that they might OD on drugs, alcohol, and sex, or those that are trying to stop the pain are going to find stronger drugs, stronger therapies, stronger everything to try to stop the energy, of which you know what happens when you try to stop life. It ends up being rest and peace, which is why those who are heavily under the influence, who are dealing with cancer, disease, and chronic illness, who don't want to feel the pain of life, who don't know how to eat, they're going to be accelerating their death process faster. And they'll be bitching at everyone until they pass away. They'll be blaming everyone for their issues. They'll be an activist. They'll be accusatory. I mean, that's the nature of the J world. For me, exposing this is that those that are under the influence, who the cannabis and all the things that they're using as therapies are not really working as far as keeping them the peace, because the environment keeps fluctuating. The cannabis, the therapies, and everything are not really working, and so they're feeling those feelings and they're projecting them, and nothing is working for them. The only way that what's working for them is to go and throw up on someone, and it doesn't matter who it is. That's what you're seeing all over Facebook, is people are not keeping their emotions under wraps, right? And they are throwing up and blaming other people. And here, for me, I'm not blaming anyone. I've taken full responsibility of everything that I've done as far as, drugs and alcohol. I've reconciled with my system. I don't need any therapies, okay? I don't even need alcohol. I knew yesterday when I was hanging out with my husband, like, honey, if I were to take a sip of alcohol, I would be 3 sheets to the wind. So I've already reconciled with my whole environment. Now I get to enjoy the food. No food is off the table. If, like yesterday, eating the McDonald's, eating the ice cream, eating the burgers, the ice cream, and the fries. It was so good. It was so fucking good. And it actually gave me a relative equilibrium, because my hormones were all over the place because of the frequencies. See, people don't realize that the frequencies out there influence the frequencies in here. And again, when you're on a specific dosage of drugs with certain algorithms, it could be prescription drugs, over-the-counter drugs, or street drugs, right? People have to switch to something higher or something stronger or something different. People have had to change their prescription drugs the last 3 years because what they were on wasn't working when the environment changed. That's what I'm saying. People don't realize that the environment has everything to do with what's going on, what your intention is. And so again, when those had a higher frequency, like the different blood types, like blood type A and B, okay, or negative, and you have those blood types that are highly influential, and yeah, you're smart, absolutely, but that's so much energy, which why then downers were prescribed to people. And of course, why cancers are also, and a overactive immune system. When you're type A and B, you have an overactive immune system. And so cancers were somehow, part of the cards. Okay, and those who are a type O, we don't have that much influential energy. We had more substance to our body because we weren't constantly converting energy like those who are blood type A and B. So blood type O's weren't as susceptible to the different cancers, disease, and chronic illnesses. Okay, we had our own issues with digestion and all that stuff, but the blood type A and B's had a lot more energy conversion, which is why they were always fighting to keep substance on their body. And so, yeah, John understands. John Oakes, I think he's blood type B, if I remember correctly. Okay, and so my husband is a blood type O. I'm a blood type O. So he's managing the pain. He's not having to fight. I mean, he was skinny when I first met him because he was always out there, landscaping and all that stuff, and very, highly mobile and stuff. And so when I came around, and yeah, we were doing a bunch of traveling, and then we ended up in the trucking industry, which is more of a sedentary, because you're driving at least 11 hours a day, so you're on your ass, and then you're taking in food. The driving industry, the trucking industry, actually saved my husband's life. It gave him the substance so he can handle this climate change. Because even type O's, if they're not balancing out their substance retention and substance release, they could also have issues because of them forcing their bodies to be deficient, denying themselves food, or always being on some kind of like upper type of thing, or constantly working so much that you're using more resources than you are retaining. Okay, but the trucking industry actually saved my husband's life. Think about it. Now, for me, I mean, the J juice saved me because you saw me, if you looked at my old account, when my husband and I were in the trucking industry, I was eating the same foods and I was steadily gaining weight. Remember how skinny I was? And then as soon as I stopped being so frenetic and trying to survive in California, because I was skinny in California, really skinny. And so when I finally relaxed and I wasn't in survival mode, and I was, allowing to put off a little bit my stress on my husband and vice versa, I gained the weight. Which is a good thing. That saved my life too. Okay? So in a lot of ways, both my husband and I saved each other's lives by allowing us to relax and go into something different as far as an occupation, so we can gain the substance, because we didn't realize, but our body was preparing us for 2019, for that energy conversion. And so the J juice then also helped with that understanding of the energy conversion. And that you couldn't be skinny in something like this. You couldn't be on diets. You couldn't really be under the influence, because now a little goes a long way. And if you're intellectually under the impression that you have to have this much alcohol and this much drugs in order for you to feel a certain way, and the environment has changed, you could OD like that. That's what people don't get. You can OD, on alcohol, you can OD on drugs. That's probably why all the ODs are happening in Ohio. I mean, fentanyl is another really aggressive drug that, holy shit, is deadly. Okay, so in this environment, I don't have to be on anything to feel the fluctuations. And then the hunger that I do feel, I then feed it with food. And I don't even need to have, such complex. I mean, yeah, having a hamburger like I did, having the fries, having the ice cream. I mean, pasta was what I was eating too, especially when I was going through my PMDD, pound of pasta to absorb that energy. Because even though being type O, you could still take on aggressive energy conversions when you're going through that evolutionary process, which is like a disease. PMDD, a chronic condition, is an energy conversion that your body has to purge out so it's not using up more resources than you're able to retain. And so how I saved myself every month was eating that pound of pasta and eating and sleeping during that time. And so that was how I was able to cope with those extreme fluctuations. So, this is unscripted, unstaged. I'm not trying to sell anyone anything. This is more for confirmation that when you do finally release those demons and you get to a relative equilibrium, and then you're fluctuating with the environment, when it's really stormy outside, you're going to feel like you're drunk. And so if you do feel weird feelings, especially when the storms are around, your hormones are in fluctuation with the particle acceleration. And so you have to understand particle acceleration. It's all the atoms. It's all the protons, neutrons, electrons, and they're accelerating, and they also influence your immune system, which has protons, neutrons, and electrons. Okay? And there's proteins, and there's hormones, and there's feelings, and there's energy. And you have to understand insulation, which is food. You have to understand that even me releasing is now easier because I've trained my body, obviously, to release, and then the energy in the environment actually helps it release a lot more. But again, things can be stubborn, want to stay inside your body, so then you know how to manipulate all your alimentary canal without hurting yourself or using and turning to aggressive substances. And so that's why you're also seeing animals are more affected now, because they were born in a slower frequency. Now they have to keep up with a higher frequency. They were born in a slower frequency, and now we're in a higher frequency environment. They have to now eat for their environment. And if they have, again, if they have predisposed issues or veterinary surgeries in their background, you're going to see so much stuff. Either they're going to gain a bunch of weight or other issues are going to happen. And so just realize that we're in a very different world, and the frequencies determine the world. The frequencies in the environment. But what do you mean frequencies? You see, we only are known what we're told, though we've had an Air Force, we've had military, we've had people manipulating the weather even back in the 1800s. You can Google weather manipulation, even just using long rods to go and capture energy in a storm and do stuff. I mean, even, what's his name, Ben Franklin was able to mess with the weather or capture energy. We know Tesla does that. People were really smart even back in the 1700s. I mean, the cradle of civilization is the Rosicrucians or the Egyptians. They understood how to harness energy. They understood how to manipulate hormones to develop an outcome. That's why the Rosicrucian Egyptian is the cradle of civilization. The cradle of mankind it could be Africa, but the actual cradle of civilization is the Rosicrucians/Egyptians. And the pharaohs and the chancellors and Imhotep and all the different kings, giants, okay? And people are like, oh God, now Jillian's in the giants. There's a whole huge human history that people are not even aware of, don't even want to acknowledge, because they don't have any kind of relationship to it, because their reality, what they experience right now, is their reality, and nothing can penetrate their current reality. That's why it's hard for me that's why I couldn't go and try to explain to someone what it's like to feel the frequencies without being under the influence with alcohol or drugs. Actually, I could feel the influence of the environment influencing my hormones like alcohol and drugs would do in a slower frequency environment. You see, that's what I'm saying. Biotech knows how to manipulate people's energy. And the drugs and the alcohol and the therapies, whether it's massage or anything else, is all frequency energy manipulation. That's all it is. That's all drugs and alcohol and sex and massage therapy and all that stuff. It's just energy manipulation. And it's using different devices, whether it's you or a device or it's an element or a substance. But then you realize that when you're finally uncured and you are now fluctuating with your environment, you're not going to need all those things. You're not going to need the therapies. You're not going to need any of the alcohols or drugs, because as soon as a storm comes in, you're going to be like, holy shit, I feel it. And you will be energetic. And people are like, oh my God, I have to take drugs in order to feel that way. I have to do this in order to feel the way you're feeling. You're doing it naturally. Absolutely, because I released the fucking demons. But telling someone who is way under the influence, telling someone or explaining to someone what you're feeling and why you're feeling this, who's under the influence, who has trauma, who is angry, who is, I don't know. You can't tell them that. That's why I'm done trying to now really convince anyone that doesn't believe where I'm coming from, because they can't believe it. That's not their fucking reality. Remember, they're stuck in a very, very tight paradigm that is so tight nothing can penetrate it. And their only God, who are their gods? It's the medical holistic system. Those who have a degree, those who are in white lab coats, that's who they worship. And then when they see something that isn't right to them, then they think that's the enemy, because it challenged their reality. And so that's why we're in a great reset, because of those who've been so traumatized they can't get out of their own way. And then when you are trying to put out a different way of being, a thought process or an idea, or even just a different sexual orientation, we have the internet to then give us those types of boundaries, that if people do try to cross them, then there's electronic ways to block people's energy from getting to you. And so that's a lot of why we're in the virtual community, because once the frequency shifted and everyone woke up to the reality of the world they lived in, many are not dealing with it very well at all. You see it on Facebook. You see the negativity. You see all the screaming, the crying, the wailing, the praise God, or pray for this person, or oh my God, I am so devastated, or you see it all. It's all over there. Everyone is throwing up on Facebook, which is great data for you to see what it's like to be in someone else's shoes. And maybe you don't really want to know everything about their shoes that they're wearing or what they're experiencing, because it's too traumatic. And you still have to get through your own trauma, so why take on somebody else's, right? That's the constant suffering that you have to block yourself from if you know how to put down your boundaries. That's why those in the medical holistic system and first responders, they're taking on negative energy upon negative energy upon negative energy. And if they have not figured out how to release and retain, they will be cannibalized by the suffering around them. Because you could be a healer, right? And be all playing with someone's chakras and playing with their bodies and selling them shit. But you're getting all of the people's problems. That's why I don't talk to private message people when they're like all about their issues and their suffering. It's why I don't really deal with emails with suffering or troll stuff. Because that's the suffering that penetrates that. But sometimes if you need to convert that energy because you need the energy, you can convert it, that's fine. But I'll tell you, when you are in a profession or you are a patient dealing with people suffering, it will cannibalize the shit out of you. So those in the J world, if you are in a medical or holistic profession, find a way out, because I'm telling you, your patients and your audience and your followers will cannibalize you. And again, if you're in politics, religions, and science dogmas, your followers, your your people that you all associate with, they will cannibalize the shit out of you. Which is why I have so many boundaries, and I don't get involved with excessive energy on Facebook. I put out the energy, let you convert it to your benefit, and then I get off. And if there's too much of a person's emotions that are coming through in any which way, I block it. That's how you protect yourself from other people's suffering. Because suffering could be extreme love. Suffering could be extreme hate. Suffering could be always just so negative about their personal situation and they have to go and throw up. Some people are so negative, I have to actually unfollow them because they have given up and but they have to emote. If they don't emote on Facebook, they would hurt themselves or somebody else. And so you can't stop people from emoting, but you can block the energy or unfollow that energy. And if they then penetrate your circle of influence, then you release them from your world because they've crossed boundaries and they are bleeding too much in your world. And so you're going to find all kinds of people who are going to find ways to take your energy. I don't care how it is, activism, suffering, excessive love, excessive hate. And you have to understand that's all manipulative energy. That's all manipulated energy. And so you'll recognize for what it is once you become uncured. All right. Good luck. Bye.